In the previous session, brothers, we discussed the status of the Quran bearers within the Sunnah and some of the Quranic verses. The Quran bearers were the core of Umar's council. We mentioned that when Umar radiallahu anh became the leader of his people, he was asked to select certain people to be among his council. Those who would involve themselves in politics, those who would make some underlying decisions for the running of that particular country. And Umar, the yardstick he used to measure who was qualified for being part and parcel of the council was their relationship with the Quran. Authority was based on Quranic grounding. It wasn't based on age or worldly rank or prestige or social status. The companions looked beyond these things. But in today's day and age, as Muslims, we have a very shallow outlook on life sometimes. We measure somebody's worth and value based off of the shoes they wear, the clothes they wear, how they look and how they speak. But this wasn't how the companions operated. They looked more at the religious contributions a person made, because that would reflect that person's iman. It would reflect the person's character. It would reflect their nobility. So this was the authority for the people of that time. Also we mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, he gave precedence when it came to burying certain companions based off of the accumulation of Quran. There's one report where after the Battle of Uhud, which happened in the second year after mass migration, there were certain casualties, and he stood between two men. And he asked the companions a direct question, that which of these two men has memorized and acted upon more Quran? To which one of the companions said, this man. He said, place him in the grave first. So precedence was given based off of the Quranic relationship the companions embodied. Today we're going to be looking at some mannerisms that Imam an-Nawawi mentions in the second chapter of the book. And the first thing he touches upon is sincerity. And it's probably one of the most important things for us, not just as students of the Quran, as teachers of the Quran, as people who admire the Quran, but as Muslims living in a Western society who have a growing desire to be public influencers, to be performers, to be out there in the open. This particular spiritual quality, it allows us to really purify our actions. So the first thing Imam Nawawi mentions is the verse from Surah Al-Bayyinah, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ وَيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. And they were not commanded except to worship Allah, being sincere to Him in religion, inclining to truth, and to establish prayer, and to give zakah, charity. And that is the correct religion. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ وَإِنَّمَا لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مَا نَوَى. Actions are by intentions, and every person will have only what they intended. Why does he mention reports that speak about the importance of having a good intention when he's talking about teaching and learning Quran? Any thoughts? What role does sincerity play in learning or teaching the Quran? What role does sincerity play here? Any thoughts, brothers? Why is this particular hadith or that particular verse mentioned when speaking about the learning or the teaching of Quran, generally speaking? Yes? Sorry? You have to be dedicated? Okay, good. What else? Anything else? Youngsters at the back there, any thoughts? No? طيب. So here we learn the intention is the foundation of Quran recitation and teaching. Without sincerity, actions lose their weight and they lose their importance. And I mentioned in the previous session that the scale system, the divine scale system that Allah will utilize after this world comes to an end to measure deeds is not based on weight, it's based on quality. And nothing improves the quality of an action like sincerity itself. And in today's world, sincerity guides us against celebrity culture, performance culture, social approval, and seeking recognition. These are things that many of us, we're seeking actively. That when we attend a certain class, when we seek to learn something, when we attend a lecture, we travel abroad to study, sometimes shaitan can influence our motives, our intents. And the reason gradually becomes that I want to show such and such a person that I've learned this much. I want to show people I'm part of a certain gathering. The intention becomes polluted. So even when reading Quran, when teaching Quran, despite the fact that these people are practicing, they're people who want Allah's pleasure, they can still be prone to insincerity. Because shaitan always stands at the path that the pious people traverse to misguide them, to put forth obstacles and distractions, to ward them off gaining Allah's pleasure. And then he goes on to making mention of certain narrations from the Salaf of the past. He says, he mentions, Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma mentions, إِنَّمَا يُعْطَى الرَّجُلُ عَلَى قَدْرِ نِيَّتِهِ, that a man is given according to his intention. And then one of the Salaf also mentioned, what is ikhlas? What is sincerity? We've mentioned the effects of sincerity. We've talked about the importance of sincerity. But what is sincerity? It's singling out Allah in obedience with the intention of drawing near to Him, without any other aim, nor for people's praise, nor for worldly gain, nor reputation. This is a definition that one of the scholars, he imparts when speaking about sincerity when it comes to educational circles. And then he mentions, ikhlas is that a servant's outward and inward actions are the same. We find that in today's day and age, this goes for imams and teachers as well as students. That when we're in public in front of people, we're praying voluntary prayer. We're speaking about religion. We're acting as if we don't commit sin. But the moment we're away from people, we transgress all of Allah's boundaries and rights. Watching what we shouldn't be watching, using language we shouldn't be using, severing ties of kinship, speaking down at people. We uphold good character in public places like mosques, while we shun our relatives and our immediate family at home. Here he mentions one of the clear signs of ikhlas is that the outward and inward actions are the same. The public and private actions are the same. There's a consistency within a believer's statements and actions if he embodies sincerity properly. He mentions a statement from Dhunnun. He says that 3 signs of sincerity. One is that when people praise or criticize you, it doesn't change your action. One of the signs of someone who embodies sincerity when learning or teaching the Quran is if people criticizes you, you continue your teaching. If people praise you, you continue in the same light. You're not fazed by criticism and you're not fazed by praise. And we find in the celebrity and social media culture we're seeing today, it's praise that's led thousands of people astray. It's chasing that celebrity culture that's caused the compromise of core religious values. Number 2 is forgetting one's own deeds while doing them. That when you do something good, you don't remind yourself of the good that you're doing again and again. So you can prove to people that I did X, Y, and Z for you. That takes away the genuineness from the action itself. So here we're taught the moment you do something good for somebody, it's helping them, teaching them, offering them some money. You don't remind that person again and again that I did all of these things for you in your time of need and difficulty. Through doing so, you're jeopardizing the most important quality of any good deed, and that's ikhlas, that's sincerity. And last but not least is seeking reward from Allah in the hereafter. The difference between religious sincerity and any other sincerity is that when you're religiously sincere, you don't look for reward or praise in this life for your actions. You seek the reward and praise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a life that's eternal, the afterlife. Because the life of this world is temporary. Everything comes to an end at one point in time. So when you acknowledge that the hereafter is worthy of more investment, that's the reward that you seek. Paradise, Allah's pleasure, your deeds being accepted, living a glamorous life in that life, even if you're struggling in this life. Al-Fudayl ibn Iyad radiyallahu anh was reported to have said, leaving an action for the sake of people is showing off. But doing it for their sake is shirk. And sincerity lies in between. It's where Allah protects you from both. Profound. طيب. Kids at the back, can I ask you guys to be quiet while we're talking, please? Yeah? Jazakumullah khairan. Problem. So leaving an act for the sake of people is showing off. But doing it for the sake of those people is shirk. So if you walk into the mosque now and you're praying a unit of prayer, And you leave off that action because somebody else is watching and you don't want them to think that you're showcasing your piety and righteousness. So you leave off that two nafil. I'm not going to pray it. That is considered showing off. But then doing it because you want their praise, it's considered a minor form of shirk. Because your intent is to do it for them. And then he mentioned, but sincerity is for Allah to protect you from both. The people's thoughts and opinions don't come to mind. Because you understand that you've committed many sins. You understand you're a devout worshipper of the one who created and fashioned you. And everything you do is in service of Him Jalla Jalalu. And if we look today at the people who are suffering in Gaza as an example, sincerity, it shines from their actions. That the smallest of things like enduring starvation, braving thirst, traveling thousands of miles to find water for their children, sincerity is just symbolic within their actions. It reflects in their words. Because that is not being done for any clout, any honor, any prestige. It's being done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this happens when a person reaches a point where he understands who his Lord is and why he's doing his actions. So ikhlas is not about appearing humble, but it's about inner freedom from the gaze of other people. This is an important point. We sometimes associate sincerity with the way somebody dresses or looks. Just because somebody wears a thobe or dons a beard does not mean that they're sincere by the get-go. No. Sincerity is much more than the outward appearance. We don't look at the way somebody talks and define whether they're sincere. It's about that person, inwardly speaking, being free from being a captive of other people's praise and compliments. That in your day-to-day actions through which you draw nearer to Allah Azza wa Jal, you're not seeking other people's approval. You're not appeasing the praise of other people. And that's what shapes ikhlas all in all. And then he talks about the dangers of mixing Quran with worldly motives. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in verse 20 of chapter 42, مَنْ كَانَ يُرِيدُ الْآخِرَةِ نَزِدَ لَهُ فِي حَرْثِهِ وَمَنْ كَانَ يُرِيدُ حَرْثَ الدُّنْيَا نُؤْتِهِ مِنْهَا وَمَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ نَصِيبٍ. Whoever desires the harvest of the hereafter will increase his harvest for him. And whoever desires the harvest of this world, we'll give him some of that. But he will have no share in the hereafter. Allahu Akbar. Profound, impactful verse. That even though we're doing something which is seemingly akhirah-centric, the intention can completely pollute that action. You're attending a weekly lesson to learn how to recite the Quran or discuss its merits. But gradually, you start to do it so people can praise you. You start to do it so you can show your relatives a photo, I'm attending a certain class. In the process, you have no gain in the hereafter. Because that lack of sincerity has jeopardized you that righteousness and piety. The Prophet ﷺ said, مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ عِلْمًا يُبْتَغَى بِهِ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ لَا يَتَعَلَّمُهُ إِلَّا لِيُصِيبَ بِهِ عَرَضًا مِنَ الدُّنْيَا لَمْ يَجِدْ عَرْفَ الْجَنَّةِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Whoever learns knowledge by which Allah's pleasure is sought, but learns it for a worldly gain, he will not smell the fragrance of paradise on the Day of Judgment. Profound hadith. Profound hadith. Here the Prophet ﷺ is not speaking about a man who isn't learning and is sat at home watching movies and just enjoying time with friends. He's speaking about somebody who's in the mosque, who's attending lessons on a weekly basis, but still he has a negative outcome. What could give birth to this outcome? It's the intention behind the outcome. The intention is the foundation of every action. What we intend when we do something is what shapes other people's perception of us. It's what shapes our religious station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we're taught that we shouldn't mix religious circles with worldly gain. Seeking pride or praise or reputation shouldn't be at the forefront of our minds when engaging in religious circles. And then he mentions another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, مَنْ طَلَبَ الْعِلْمَ لِيُمَارِي بِهِ السُّفَهَاءَ أَوْ يُكَاثِرْ بِهِ الْعُلَمَاءَ أَوْ يَصْرِفْ وُجُوهَ النَّاسِ إِلَيْهِ أَدْخَلَهُ اللَّهُ النَّارِ. Whoever seeks knowledge to argue with the foolish or boast before the scholars or to turn people's faces towards him, Allah will place him in the fire. These are very scary reports that are speaking about the outcomes of a lack of sincerity, the outcome of a lack of internalization of Islamic knowledge. Knowledge is not just that which we passively consume. It's that which we stop and we think, why am I learning this? I've learned the Prophet ﷺ told me to respect my parents, to stay away from haram, to not do what my friends are doing because it's considered to be the status quo. Rather, we're taught to think beyond just these actions. We're taught to really think, if the Prophet's teaching me these things and my parents are teaching me X, Y, and Z, is this reflecting in my day-to-day actions? That's what determines the weight of our deeds. That's what determines if that deed is going to be accepted or not. So the pursuit of Quranic learning must never become a career ladder or a tool for a self-image. Religious celebrity culture falls under these warnings, and especially when sincerity is compromised. Then Imam an-Nawawi posits some advice to teachers and learners, and he mentions the teacher must avoid seeking status through students, disliking other students benefiting from other fellow teachers, using teaching as a way to gain gifts or favors. And then he cites a statement of Ali ibn Abi Talib where he says, O bearers of the Quran, act upon the book. Knowledge is only that which is acted upon. There will come people who carry knowledge, but it does not go beyond their throats. Their deeds oppose their knowledge, and their inner state oppose their outward appearance. Allahu Akbar. Profound. And Imam al-Shafi'i, when we speak about sincerity, his example comes to mind. There's one quote that he said towards the end of his life. And for those of us who know the type of man he was, the intellect, the shrewdness, the thoroughness that he possessed, the contributions he made to Islamic scholarship, we understand the weightiness of the statement. He once said, I wish that people learn this knowledge of mine, provided that it wasn't attributed to me even a single letter of it. I wish people would study my works, follow my school of thought, learn from my teachings and my publishings without attributing a single letter to me. So he could uphold that sincerity. So this was a man who understood that why do I need people to know that I have written this? Why do people need to know that that WhatsApp message was written by me? Why do people need to know that I'm the one who taught that person how to recite, or I taught that person a certain narration? When these thoughts crop into our mind, it's a sign that our sincerity is being jeopardized. Imam al-Shafi'i used to often say, I wouldn't want people to even attribute a letter of that knowledge to me. As long as they benefit from my works, Allah is documenting my reward. My deeds are consolidated. The reward is guaranteed. The less people know about a good deed, the more protected the person is. And the more the likelihood of acceptance, it significantly grows. What are the lessons we learn from today's session? Number one is value is set by intention. The same Quran study can earn a person paradise, and it can also earn a person nothing. Intention is the decisive factor of worth. And that's why the famous hadith that's mentioned in nearly every book of hadith first, that deeds are by intentions. And the one who marries a woman for a worldly gain, he will have what he married her for, and vice versa. It's a lengthy hadith. But here we learn the reason behind the person's intention will reflect in his behavior at one point in time. So here we're taught we have to really ask ourselves, why am I doing this? And we live in a society now where knowledge is at our fingertips. Just scrolling the screen, we can consume passively 20, 30 videos containing Islamic knowledge in just 15 minutes. But the question is that going to be evidence for us or against us? Have we asked ourselves, why am I learning this? What's actually being said? How can I implement this into my day-to-day life? Or are we passively consuming and building evidence against us? It's intention that determines the value of our actions, not the mere passive consumption of it. Number two, the intention guards against misuse. When we learn Islamic knowledge without sincerity, our deeds and our hearts become prone to all sorts of spiritual misuse. Pride, ego, backbiting, self-flattery, looking down on other people. These are all spiritual illnesses that even a student or a teacher of the Quran can possess. But the one thing that serves as a fortifying factor for us is the sincerity. The sincerity guards a person against all these spiritual vices. And that's why Fudail ibn Iyad said, to do an action for someone is to leave off an action because somebody is watching is showing off. And to do it for them is a form of minor shirk. But to leave off both of them is a safe haven. And that's ikhlas in and of itself. Last but not least is intention unlocks Qur'an's transformative power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Qur'an, whenever He talks about the word tadabbur, and the word tadabbur, it refers to looking beyond the apparent meaning. If Allah says something in a Quranic verse, to reflect upon that verse to a point where you're looking beyond that surface meaning, that's referred to as tadabbur. And there are many ayat that really probe us to engage in this particular thing. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ أَمْ عَلَى قُلُوبٍ أَقْفَالُهَا. That don't they contemplate the Qur'an, or are there locks upon their hearts? And whenever the word tadabbur is mentioned, it's associated with the heart. Why? Because a true intention, it stems from the heart. And it's that true intention that unlocks transformative power of the Qur'an. So here we're taught that if we want to read the Qur'an, learn it, but at the same time benefit from its rewards and perks, we have to have pure intention. And that's how we unlock the Qur'an's transformative abilities. There are people in the world whose lives were transformed by reading this book. Till today we meet reverts and converts who just through reading a single verse in the English language, they transform their lives completely. They leave off their actions. Okay? They left off by their family folk and they come to a different religion. There's more harm involved than good seemingly. But still they make this sacrifice because the Qur'an transforms those people. It penetrates their hearts, and that's because of the intention behind the reader. That if a person's intention is clear, the Qur'an will present its jewels and diamonds to that person when reading that book. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to act upon what we learn. Inshallah, the brothers at the back, I'm hoping you guys are going to give some benefits because you were talking the whole way. So I'm going to ask you guys for questions. It's okay, akhi. What did you dream about? At least tell us that. Allahu Akbar.
It's a good point, a reminder that not to seek like praise from your deeds. So it's a bit of a strange one because I'm going through a lot of things this week myself. So it's a good reminder not to like in this field or doing that field. But how do you go if you've got another Muslim brother coming to you saying, "Oh, I've done you this in the past and I've done you that," how do you deal with it?
How do you respond? Yeah, I mean, you don't really have control over what other people say or do. I mean, if he's done things for you, then he's throwing that back at you. And those deeds, he's ruining them himself. But I mean, all you can do in that position is to remind that person that I appreciate what you've done for me. But if you're reminding me of the good, you're nullifying the action in itself. So you can remind that person of that. But you don't have any ultimate control over his words or actions. The end.
I think it's very important to be sincere. Sometimes you can be doing a good deed. The intention might have started off as you're being sincere to your good, but then all of a sudden you start like bragging about it, and then slowly that sincere intention starts to become null and void because now you're enjoying the praise of people. And it reminds me of a hadith of when there was a Sahaba and he committed adultery and he was executed for that as a punishment. Other Sahaba were I can't believe that he did this and that. And the Prophet ﷺ reprimanded them. He said, right now he's swimming in Jannah because he paid for the punishment. I think sometimes when we person doesn't do that much, or they only give a little bit, whereas look how much I gave. Whereas you might lose your good deeds on Yom Kippur because you were insincere, but whereas the other person didn't even do half of what you did, maybe did a fraction, but he's going to gain more reward because he's sincere. So I think it's very important to be sincere.
Mujib?
I was thinking, I think we're living in a time where, from very early on, it's a case of showing what you're doing, showing things and whatever. It's like the saying, I don't know, well, people used to kind of kindly say, they used to say, if you didn't snap it, it didn't happen. You didn't snap it. Whereas the case where you have to show everything you're doing, you told.
He said you're too old.
Basically, if you didn't take the picture, it didn't happen. That's all.
Yeah, well, now it is a case where a lot of youngsters, a lot of people, they feel like there's no point doing something without having someone watching or having someone. So they've even made eating in front of a camera. They've got heroes eating all sorts of things. They've got a big market station. It takes away this idea that you should do things for Allah. There's a bigger reason for doing good things. And a lot of that has been eroded away because of the century, the time we're living in. So it's about going back to basics and understanding that there is Allah. And when we die, it could be tomorrow, it could be the day after, it could be in a car crash in a few years. You don't know when you're going to die. That's the harsh reality of life. So you should prepare for it, at least do a little bit when you can.
Jazakallah. So just one little thing each one. Okay, very good, mashallah. Mashallah, very good, mashallah. Mashallah, very good. You guys are good multitaskers, mashallah. Carry on, next person. Mashallah, very good.
Deed without intention has no reward.
Very good, mashallah. Mashallah, excellent, good.
It's not the one in blue, didn't say.
Huh?
It's the one in blue.
Sorry?
The one in blue didn't say anything.
Have you got anything to say?
Say one thing, bro.
Well, achieving the right people.
Okay, very good, mashallah.
You said that?
It's alright, you can have it, it's okay. Ajmi? Assalamu alaikum.
I was reading one of the sayings of one of the scholars, and he's talking about sincerity, and he said sincerity distinguishes between good deeds and sins, like milk distinguishes between filth and blood. And you know, when I was reading it, I thought this very, the depth of that is unbelievable, because the deeds themselves that we do, we think we are doing good. But in fact, what our good deeds in our mind might be good, but in fact they might be filthy. Yeah? Because we're not doing it for the sake of Allah. And the problem with this is, and over the years, as I've got older, you've seen people that have degenerated and corroded their personality because they haven't got this point straight. Yeah? Let that be influencers, let that be people that have been engaged in Islamic activism and dawah and activities. You've seen their personalities corroded because they didn't do it for the sake of Allah and His Messenger. You understand? Now, what kind of things can creep in? Ego, malice. But what I've seen a lot more in the Western world, especially in this country, is treachery. Treachery that, for the sake of, I think you used the word clout. It's a young person word. Using clout, you will do anything for it, even treachery. To Islam and Allah's message. That's my definition.
Don't like try to be ignorant of your knowledge because someone always has more knowledge than you.
For the speech. Just going off what the brother said before, when you do something and someone expects something back, I think that's one of the beauties of Islam as well. So even the Yehudis and the Saras, like all the religions, they don't have this thing where, I'm doing it for the sake of God. When they do something, they expect something back from that person. So as being a Muslim and doing something for the sake of Allah, it's a beauty in itself for yourself and the other person as well. So it's in this world where we have a pyramid scheme. In Islam, everyone gets the best of it, whereas the social norms of this country and the Western norms, someone has to get the top, and then they'll get the most benefit, and it always has to go down and down. But in Islam, everyone gets the benefit from the action, and it's really good reminder as well, because nowadays everyone has that intention. I want to become a hafiz, I want to become a alim, I want to become sheikh, I want to become this title, but there's no khushu in the action, there's no khushu in namaz. You'll have these people with titles, and then they're leading namaz or they're leading salah, and it's quicker started than done. So really good reminder as well, especially for myself as well,